are talking The Midnight Man. This is a 2016 movie directed by Travis Zarwini. Zarwini previously directed the Cabin Fever remake, and here he does a kind of creepypasta story. Now, I should point out, this is not to be confused with also another movie released the same year, The Midnight Man. That one was an action one, this one is a horror one, so a little bit confusing there. So The Midnight Man, the horror version, stars two genre icons in the form of Robert Englund and Lynn Shay, although they are supporting roles. So what is the plot of The Midnight Man? So this is based on a creepypasta, and focuses on a kind of cursed game with a kind of ghoulish protagonist that looks a little bit like the Sleepwalker character from Marvel. What the setup is this: we have this this young girl who is kind of looking after her sickly grandmother in this kind of large house, and you know, she finds this kind of old game basically in the attic, and she's there with her kind of boyfriend, and they decide that they're going to play this weird looking game which has got blood fingerprints on it and all sorts of stuff. Why wouldn't you, eh? And of course this inevitably brings forth the Midnight Man, who essentially is a creature that makes you feel your worst fears and then decides to kill you. We get another kind of person, another friend turns up a little bit later on as well to join the game. And can they find a way to defeat the Midnight Man? What will happen? Well, you have to watch the movie and find out. So let us discuss what I think works in this movie. So obviously you have a couple of recognisable characters here, and I think they both do a pretty good job. Lynn Shay, outside of the kind of the Insidious franchise, which is in horror movies, always seems to play a crazy crone, and that is what she's doing in this movie. I mean, she's good in it, but she kind of is, you know, playing the kind of the same thing she always plays, to be honest with you. But I quite like Robert Englund's character in a more subdued role. He plays like a doctor who may have links to the kind of Midnight Man himself. And initially I thought the Robert Englund was just going to be a cameo, but he sort of turns up for a longer sort of section towards the end of the movie. But I thought they were both quite watchable, to be honest with you. One thing I did like about this movie is the design of the Midnight Man himself. I thought he was quite an interesting design. As I mentioned, he kind of looks like Sleepwalker, but one aspect that I did like is he kind of changes his face, as in actual masks, when he has, like, wants to smile, wants to have a sad face. He'll literally kind of take off his face and kind of replace it with a kind of more suitable, emotive kind of expression with another kind of face. There's no real reason for it. It's nothing to do with like theatre masks or anything like that, but it looks cool. But I like his actual kind of aesthetic, and he was quite kind of a creepy kind of character, long and lanky with kind of long fingers and everything like that. I thought he looked pretty good. And there is actually some reasonable kind of like death scenes here as well, I have to say. The actual gore effects, although I wouldn't call this an explicit movie, you know, there are some pretty good effects here. When he first essentially attacks someone to find out their fears, he kind of puts his kind of fingers in their head and sort of sucks out their fears. There's a couple of good sequences where we see eyeballs bulging out and stuff, and we get a little kid exploding in the kind of the snow, and you know, a cloud of red kind of snow around it. I thought there was some fun kind of sequences. And speaking of fun sequences, I think the actual intro where we see Lynn Shay's character when she was essentially a little girl, I personally think is the strongest scene in the movie, albeit I don't think the kid actors are particularly strong, but it's probably the most effective scene, I would say. And I gotta say, this movie does have a certain production value to it. It does feel like it's kind of quite well shot. The kind of the location, the props, the set design, all looks of pretty good quality, I have to say. And it's relatively well filmed, obviously taking place at midnight, as you'd probably expect. You know, obviously it's going to be dark, but I think they do a good job here of making it dark and creepy, but still kind of like giving you enough light so you can kind of see what's kind of going on. And there are a few kind of scenes, for example, one with the mannequin, which seems to be kind of moving around, which I think looks pretty good. So there, you know, there you go. So what doesn't work? Do you know, I mean, this movie, I think the concept is stronger than the execution. I mean, it's not a bad film, right? But to me, this was like a very typical, generic, lackluster kind of like oh, it's a cursed game kind of movie. I don't really feel it really excelled in any particular area, maybe outside the kind of the VFX. The story-wise, to me, it just seemed so typical of what you've seen before in these sort of things. I mean, you know, and in some aspects, I think it even borders on the ridiculous. For example, some of the decisions that these kind of characters make are borderline, you know, stupid. I mean, why would you play this game? I mean, it's one of these games where it doesn't actually seem to have a point. I mean, if you can, you know, why would you play a game that you can't possibly win? I mean, I get they didn't realise they were gonna summon a demon, but what would you think, you know, what is the end game of it? What does it actually benefit you if you were to kind of, is it gonna be like gonna show you your future? No, it doesn't do anything. So even if you kind of like, well, what's the point? Because there's no real benefit to you. And it just seems a little bit hokey. You know, there's this blood, all these kind of blood fingerprints where people have kind of essentially signed their name. It's just, come on. Some kind of like silly elements as well. We have this third kind of like friend that kind of shows up, and these two friends just let her kind of join the game, knowing at this point there is a you know, a supernatural monster that is out to kill them. But they kind of let her join along because she goes, oh, I might be able to help. It's like, what? You know, there's also some sillier elements here. I mean, this might be a small nitpick, but you know, they discover this kind of like this game in like an old box, and it's got this salt shaker on it. Come on, that salt ain't going to be coming out free flowing after it's been kind of like in a box for 50 years. That shit is going to be all kind of congealed and sucking up the moisture, and it ain't coming out. You know, I thought it was very kind of like silly at times, and I have to be honest with you, I thought some of the acting by our younger cast wasn't particularly strong. I've already mentioned the kind of the kids and the kind of the intro, not the strongest, so that's a short scene, but our main sort of character, I've got to say, especially our female lead, I thought was quite weak at times. It's not helped by some overly kind of clunky dialogue, and even our kind of veteran actors, Lynn Shay and Robert Englund, have to kind of chew out these kind of like, you know, unnatural kind of lines that you just wouldn't say in kind of real life, but it looks good when you kind of like, you know, writing a script and stuff like that. It's all very kind of generic. It's all very much like things you've kind of seen before. You know, we see a sequence where we have a void in the background, you know, so we know that watch for this thing. This thing is going to be important later on. It's like, I understand you might want to have some foreshadowing, but it kind of takes away from any kind of real kind of scares or kind of that. It's all very formulaic, ultimately, I think, this movie. So, not necessarily bad. Does the bad outweigh the good? I mean, does the kind of the negatives outweigh the positives on this one? To me, it's kind of like, not a bad watch, I don't think, but it's pretty forgettable. You know, it's one of these ones where I feel like, do you know what? It was an okay one-time watch, but I would never kind of like seek to kind of re-watch it, to be honest with you, because it just doesn't have any type of real kind of lasting appeal, any real re-watchability or anything like that. The concept is, I think, solid for a decent movie, but it's fumbled a little bit on execution, but not to the point where it's an unwatchable movie. I do think there are elements here that you can enjoy. Certainly the kind of the practical effects and the kind of the actual creature design and some of the deaths are worth watching alone, but the story is where it really falls down. So for me, it's a bang on average 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.